Welcome back, Deckheads, to Cast a Commotion, the podcast where we talk about the beginnings of Flesh and Blood, how to get started. And right now, in this beginning segment, back to basics, we're covering the sets, base mechanics that are included in them, and just what you can do with it. Just a quick correction from the last episode, I was kind of fumbling quite a bit on the mechanics of Commotion, the fabled from Tales of Aria. It would appear that, Channel Mount Heroic does give the +3 as it enters play, and I guess Corsham does see that. It was clarified in a reprise article from Flesh and Blood themselves. So after a little bit of digging after the episode, I decided to throw this in the front of the episode for Uprising, the set we're going to be covering this time. I'm very happy to be covering Uprising. It means we're closing in on the last couple of sets, so I can actually start making a little bit more in-depth content, but I do want to make sure that all of this is here for newer players to catch up on a lot of the base mechanics that they're going to be seeing, I'm sure, from here on forward. Uprising was one of the standalone sets. It's the first of Flesh and Blood 2.0. It's a pretty exciting time. This is when we went away from the first edition Unlimited style boxes. It demonstrates the brutal civil war that's inside of Volcor, starts to talk about the naming conventions of characters from this region, which reveals that even Viserai must be from this area, kind of detailing how he might have innate arcane powers. From Volcor come the legendary dragons that are seen in the illusionist Dramai. One of the better quotes I've seen on a card comes from this set, and as much as I loved Tales of Aria, Uprising, it just continues the tradition of this game blowing me away from an artistic standpoint, a story standpoint, and just an overall card design standpoint. The card that I'm talking about is Uprising itself, and it tells us all we need to know about the land of Volcor. With every great cycle, a phoenix rises to challenge the dragon. Yet as sure as dynasties rise and fall, every feathered emperor soon grows scales. It is such a bleak quote that shows that it doesn't matter what happens. There is this vicious cycle to humanity inside of Volcor. But with that, we're going to start talking about the rules, extra things, heroes introduced, weapons, and ideas and concepts for Uprising, this time on Cast a Commotion. Uprising came in at the most interesting time. It's when we just weren't sure that we needed two different printings of cards. Legend Story Studios was finding out what kind of company it is and what it's able to do. I want to say across the world, we've seen the game grow left and right. This is when Europe got the most involved, I feel like, that I've seen so far. Japan was announced to be getting its own printings for its own localized language. History packs were starting to come out just before this. The world was starting to really accept this game as one of the bigger players. Or going into the 2.0 era of Flesh and Blood, we start to see a new type of card introduced called the Marvels, a whole new collectability aspect. I don't really know how to talk about these in a back to basics kind of segment where we're just talking about mechanics. Just suffice it to say, that's a very collectible item, and if you see that little triangle, that little purple triangle, hold on to that card. Uprising came out late June, just in time for all of the competitive season, and people were very hungry to see what this set could do. A few of the returning keywords in this set are Battle Worn, Blade Break, Dominate, Go Again. I can't imagine we're ever going to see a set without Go Again, but no, we'll see what the future brings us. There's also Arcane Barrier and Opt making a return in this set. We saw the word negate, which I thought was kind of wild. That's the counterspell mechanic in this game. They're very limited, far and few in between. I don't believe I've ever seen a card with negate played, but we're going to keep our eye on that as time continues. Temper makes another reappearance on some equipment. And then from Monarch, we see the return of phantasm attacks because this set introduces another type of illusionist. There are channels, there are essences, and there are fusions in this set, which is why we have to go all over those from Tales of Aria. And that's why we're doing this series in this way, to make sure that you have a complete understanding of everything that we run into as the game grows. Tokens coming back are Frostbite. For the first time, we see Scar for a Scar reprinted without its foil, further instilling in me and my belief as a collector that if you're in it for the investing portion or even just the collector's portion, you just like to have nice things and you want to have them for a long time, the foils are the way to go with this game because we just don't seem to be seeing reprints. -1 next set. We'll talk more about that then. Just like every other one of these back to basics, we're just going to go down that list and talk about what's introduced in the set. One of the more exciting cards was Frost Hex. It's an Ice Wizard action Affliction. That's a new type of card that we've seen, a new keyword we've seen for Uprising. An Affliction enters the arena under an opposing hero's control. So it's kind of like a negative enchantment for your opponent. If an object with the subtype Affliction enters the arena, it enters the arena under the control of an opposing hero. When control of the object changes, it doesn't change the owner of the object. So, like, you don't just get the card. I don't know why they would have to specify that, but they do. When an object would be sent to the graveyard, it's sent to the owner's graveyard. So just note it doesn't go to your... If you're afflicted by the affliction, it doesn't go to your graveyard. Unless it says that in the future. I always like to preface it with that, because I don't know exactly what's going to be happening in the future. But yeah, Icelander, one of the heroes from Everfest, a supplementary set in between Tales and Uprising, makes her full debut here, and this is one of the cards she begins to use. We'll go over that card a little bit more if it pops up again, but just know that afflictions are a thing now. You can afflict people with different curses and things that hurt them in many ways, assumptively from here on out. The next card is called an Invocation. This is a dual-faced card. It's not the first dual-faced card we've seen. Obviously tokens and then marvels from or majestic cold foils, crazy stuff from Everfest, but we didn't go over that because that's a supplemental set, and most supplemental sets don't really introduce a whole lot new to the game. They just supplement the game. So we don't talk about those a whole lot. But Invocations are a dual-faced card. Invocations resolve flipped as an ally in the arena. I said that weird. As an ally into the arena. So basically, there's a lot of tokens and things to help you. You could also just learn your cards really well, but either way, you're going to need to know the stats of each card before you start playing these because, well, you're supposed to have the back of your card covered during tournaments, and, well, it creates a problem. If a card with the subtype Invocation resolves as a layer, it enters the arena flipped. The Invocation is the front of the card. I know that much. For the double-faced card, right? The Invocation is the front. It's the action of the card. When the dual-faced card Invocation is put into a zone other than the layers or the arena, it becomes a new object and resets to the front face, right? So a lot of players like to keep them turned around. It's best practice not to. Somebody could find a way to shark you with that. As I've said in the previous episodes of this podcast, I don't want you to become a shark, but I want you to know how to defend yourself against sharks. I want to be your teacher in the defense against the dark sharks. Like, it's just, that's the only way I can describe it. So try to get in the good habits of keeping your cards front-faced, as the Invocation is in the front of the card, just in case somebody decides to be a raging asshole. But when it's sent to the graveyard or shuffled into your deck or pitched or whatever happens to it, just flip it over again. We did have this problematic thing pop up called Quell. If your hero would be dealt damage, you can pay X to prevent X of that damage. So if it's Quell 1, you can pay 1 to prevent 1. If you do destroy Quell at the beginning of the end phase. This is a pretty unique ability, but for one reason or the other, we played it like you could just have 6 Carrion Husks in your deck or something like that. You can't Quell 1 6 times to the same source. So it's a static ability that generates a fixed prevention effect. So it just hangs out, and then if you would be dealt damage, you can just pay X to prevent X of that damage, right? It's there until the requirements are met. The prevention effect is optional when the effect is applied. So you can choose whether to pay the amount. The prevention effects reduce the damage and creates a delayed trigger effect that destroys the source of the object at the beginning of the end phase. So what that means is you can choose when to use Quell. It's your discretionary choice. And then it creates a delayed trigger that's going to destroy the object at the end of the phase. If another prevention effect reduce the damage to 0, the replacement condition is no longer met. Damage isn't dealt, right? So quell doesn't apply. The prevention amount applies to a single damage event. That's the important part that I went over before all this. Leftover prevention amounts do not apply to any future damage that would be dealt to your hero. You have to also, in addition, pay for those. If the damage can't be applied due to some sort of effect, the delayed trigger effect is still created. So if for some reason you quell something, I don't know why you would do this, but if you quell something that's dealing 1 damage to you, but for some reason that gets prevented, that doesn't save the equipment. It's still going to be destroyed at the end of the phase because that's just a secondary effect of the quell. We also have an ability into the game called Ward. A lot of prevention effects entered the game for Uprising. If your hero would be dealt damage, prevent X of that damage and destroy this. So it's Ward X. So like Ward 3 would prevent 3 damage and then be destroyed. It's another static ability that generates a fixed prevention. So there's just this barrier in front of you, you know? The prevention effect is not optional, however. So with Ward, it has to happen. Whenever you'd be dealt damage, it's going to happen. You can't wait for later to use it. It's not going to hang around. If another prevention effect reduces the damage to 0, well, then Ward doesn't see any damage and it doesn't care. Leftover prevention doesn't apply to any future damage. It's a one-time source to a one-time source. If the damage prevention can't be applied due to another effect, the object with Ward on it is still destroyed as part of its replacement effect application. So if for some reason like they prevent you from preventing X damage, it's kind of a niche case, but this is happening now with some new equipment. So if you have Ward 1 to prevent 1 damage, and someone stops you from being able to prevent damage, Ward doesn't care about that. It's still going to be destroyed because it tried to prevent the damage. Felt like that was a weird little whirlpool of words. We're just going to move on, huh? New effect keywords are transform. Put something under this, it, him, her, anything, they, them, whatever. And then you create a token and put that under it. So transform is a discrete effect. It's its own thing. To transform subject objects into other objects, you have to first create the object in the arena. That's a weird sentence. What we're going to say is the example is going to be a card from this set called Billowing Mirage. Okay? It's a draconic illusionist action. Attack. Okay? It says when you attack with Billowing Mirage, transform up to 1 ash you control into an Aether Ashwing. Go again. So basically, you need the ash in the arena before that effect can happen. Okay? To transform objects into a token that does not exist yet, you have to first create the token and then put the object underneath it. Realistically, you should have all of your tokens available for whatever you're playing that requires these effects. I know there's shortcuts you can take in armories and things like that, but as always, try to get in the habit of packing those tokens around so you can make good use of them. To transform objects into existing permanents, you put objects underneath it. So if there's something on the board that says it transforms, but there's stuff on the board already for it, you just move the object you're transforming underneath it. When used in conjunction with cards that flip, like invocations, the card is first flipped and becomes a permanent in the arena. Then the transform will refer to that permanent as the specified object it transforms into. So it will go in this order. Play invocation, flip card, put object under card. Okay. The way that they word this is insane. Like, I feel like it's way more complicated than it needs to be for new players, but at the same time, that's all you need to know, is it means play the card, flip the card, put the card on top of an object that it transforms from, right? Pretty easy. If the transform fails and there are no transform subjects, or if they cannot be put under the specified object for whatever reason, you just kind of move on. I feel like that one's a really hard one to talk about. The next keyword is freeze. A frozen object cannot be played or activated. Very simple, very easy to understand. It just cannot be played or activated. Doesn't matter if it's an instant, action, equipment, whatever. Cannot be played or activated. Freeze was causing a lot of problems when it first came out because we just didn't quite understand the limitations. But let's note, freeze is a continuous effect. An object under the effect of freeze is considered frozen. Some cards look for that keyword. A frozen object cannot be played, its activated abilities cannot be activated until it is no longer frozen. It is recommended that frozen objects be physically indicated using like some kind of counter token or something. If the effect unfreeze applies to an object, it's no longer frozen and the effect ends. There was a lot of questions as to how long freeze lasted on some cards, but most of them say something like, freeze one card in their arsenal and one ally they control until the start of your next turn. So that would even be through the end phase and all that. I feel like I'm burning through this. I guess we'll go over the Fabled, because it was kind of unique. It was Blood of the Drakai. It's a Draconic resource gem. So as we know from the previous episodes, you need to be Draconic to use this, because it has the Draconic type in it. It's legendary. When you pitch Blood of the Drakai, the next 3 Draconic cards you play this turn cost 1 resource less. The cost reduction does not apply to the card it's being pitched to pay for, because it's a triggered ability that only resolves after the card is played, not during its cost paying. The cost reduction does not apply to activated abilities, because it says Draconic cards you play cost 1 less. Always look for those words: play, activate, all that. You need to be sure of what you're doing. So Draconic weapons or equipment cannot be activated for 1 less using this card. You cannot play or defend with Blood of the Drakai, because it doesn't have a cost or a defense. That's really all there is. It's a pretty niche gem to, I mean, all of them really are, except for Hard to Find All and Eye of Ophidia. And now that I say that out loud, never mind. Point being, Draconic Illusionist is going to be the first class we're going over. We're just moving straight along from that, because anyway. Dromai, the Ash Artist, is the first of the heroes introduced in Uprising. Her whole life is just ash and flame. She was manipulated from the shadows of Volkor's high courts to kind of like control the populace with her strong illusion capabilities, but she's moved on past that. She has seen a destiny in which she becomes the Emperor, I believe, if I remember right. Very powerful hero, very powerful in the story, rising to prominence, but just weird overall how they chose to implement this character. And by that, I mean the ability. She says, whenever you pitch a red card, create an Ash token. All right. So first off, we didn't know what an Ash token was, like at all. All you really have to know about the Ash token is it's a token that's generated and put into the arena, and it's what's called a material. It just kind of hangs out there until it's used. Other cards will tell you if it uses Ash. If you've played a red card this turn, dragons you control have go again. And only red cards, right? This rewards you for pitching red cards by creating Ash tokens. And then if you play red cards, the dragons you create illusions for all gain go again. So she can become quite the force. I shouldn't have to say this, but a red card is a red card with a color bar that is red. That's usually at the top of the card is what it says, but it's like 99.9% of the time. You can create more than 1 Ash token a turn. It's a triggered effect. It doesn't say once per turn. If you have not played a red card, then attack with a dragon, and then play a red instant, it gets go again. Right? It's like all those other weapons that I've been talking about, Anothos and all those others. It's just checking for at some point before resolution, did you do this? If so, create effect. If an attacking dragon dies before the resolution step of the combat, you don't get the action point from go again. That's just how that works. You're going to need to learn how to watch out for that if you're playing Dromai. Her weapon is the Storm of Sandakai. It's a scepter, 2-handed, much like the Luminaris, but it has your dragon allies have once per turn action, 0 cost, attack. Doesn't give them go again, it just gives her the ability to control the dragons. Kind of weird that this is like a must-have weapon for Dromai, because otherwise a lot of the dragons just become literally unusable. Super weird. This weapon gives an attack ability to your dragons. The dragons are the ones that actually attack, not your hero. When your dragon allies do attack, your hero is not considered the attacking hero, and you cannot play attack reactions during the reaction step of combat. They're totally independent things. Attacking with a dragon ally and then playing an attack action card does not close the combat chain. They are considered an attack. Attacking with a dragon usually costs an action point. It doesn't grant an action point unless it has go again. Just note, there are some instances where that's not true, but you know, I want to talk more about Dromai and the Draconic Illusionist. I want to talk more about kind of like what these things do, but I want to save that for future in-depth dives for each hero. I guess I'll just go over like the basic strategy for Dromai. Dromai really likes to just kind of sit there, turtle up, build a board of dragon illusions, and then just swarm your opponent, right? It can be kind of hard to build an army of dragons, but once she does, she becomes really hard to deal with. She also just has access to some of the most aggressive cards in the game because she only likes to play red cards. It's a weird pattern of play. Dramai is a difficult hero to play. I should have been giving ratings to all these heroes as we go, but realistically, Dramai is a pretty difficult hero to play. I just want to give one example of dragons. We'll go with Tumultai, because that's the one that I like the most. I don't play Dramai, but from the art, I like Tumultai the most. It's Invoke Tumultai/Tumultai. It's a Draconic Illusionist action. Invocation / Draconic Illusionist Dragon Ally. Tumultai comes in red pitch only, costs 5 resources, has 3 defense, and that's the invocation side of the card. It's also legendary. When you play Invoke Tumultai, it says transform target Ash you control into Tumultai. And then you flip the card, and then the dragon side says 5 power, 5 health. So it's a pretty big ally, attacking for 5 when you do, and has 5 health, so it takes a bit of force to destroy. But invoking it has go again, so you'll be able to attack first turn you play it. And it says, when Tumultai attacks a hero, reveal the top 2 cards of your deck. If one or more red cards are revealed this way, put that many -1 defense counters on equipment they control. Then if it has 0, destroy it. So that's kind of like just a taste of what the dragons can do. That's one of the more powerful ones. So you invoke this card, you invoke Tumultai, you flip an Ash under it, and then you flip Tumultai, and you get the dragon. From then on, because you've played a red card, the invocation side of this card, you get the go again on your dragons, and then the invocation itself has go again. It's pure gas all the way through, and then when you attack, you have a chance to destroy an opponent's armor. All of the dragons have their own unique effects, and there's a lot of cool play styles you can get out of them. So definitely make sure to read through all of them to see what your favorite are. The next hero is the hero that I played for this set. I won this cold foil and was very excited to have done so because I wanted to play Ninja for a long time, but this was a very interesting take on Ninja. A lot of the Ninja attacks before had really cool breakpoints, really cool combos. Fi didn't give a shit about that. Fi is just unhinged aggression is the best way to put it. Fi, the Rising Rebellion, attacks a lot for not a lot, right? Many times for 3 damage very frequently. It was kind of weird because everybody said, oh, well, if everything's just 3 damage, wouldn't you just block it all? Well, it's a lot to block. He just kind of leaks through damage here and there through quick little whips and cracks of fire, and then just little jabs here and there. But let's jump into him. Draconic Ninja Hero, and the ability he has is you may start the game with a Phoenix Flame in your graveyard. Okay, so we'll go over the Phoenix Flame real quick. It's just a token that you can have up to 3 of in your deck. All right, it is a draconic attack action with go again. It costs 0, is a red pitch, attacks for 0, and I don't believe it has a block. And it says, if you have 2 or more draconic links on the combat chain, this gets +1. Doesn't sound super crazy, but Fi has a second ability that says once per turn instant. For 3 resources, return a Phoenix Flame from your graveyard to your hand. This ability costs 1 less resource for each draconic chain link you control. So eventually, with how Fi works and is just that unrestricted attacking, you're going to have a wide enough draconic chain to just get your Phoenix Flame for free. And it just becomes a free attack that extends the chain, threatens all kinds of on-hits, etc., etc., etc. The Phoenix Flame from the first ability is taken from your presented deck. It's included in the minimum cards required in the deck at the start of the game. This means you could start a game with 59 cards in the deck zone for Classic Constructed, right? Which could be good, could be bad. A draconic attack becomes a chain link when it resolves as a layer on the stack and becomes attacking. So just as long as the attack happens at all, it is a draconic chain link if it has the draconic type. If the combat chain is open and you're still considered to control a draconic chain link, even if the attack is no longer on the combat chain, last known information is used to determine that type of chain link. Very rarely does that come up, but there's a card called Double Strike in this set that does banish itself once it resolves. Discounts to resource costs are applied after increases, so if an effect would increase the resource cost of Fi's ability, the decreases would be applied after that. So if somebody has Channel Lake Frigid on you, just add that first and then reduce. And Phi's instant ability can be activated on the opponent's turn, but you wouldn't control any Draconic Chain Links. So I'm trying to think if blocking with an attack action would count it as a Draconic Chain Link. So just like with Corsham, I'm a little unsure on that. I'm going to say no, because I think... Nope, I'm going to go ahead and say that's not even a thing. I don't even know why I thought that would be a thing. I just remembered that the controller of the Chain Link is the same as the attack that represents it. So the owner of the Chain Link is the one attacking. So you can't create Chain Links on the opponent's turn right now? Question marks. But we're just going to go ahead and move on from that. I really got lost in thinking about that. Sorry. I am interested about that, though. We'll go over Phi's weapon, the Searing Emberblade. It's a Draconic Ninja weapon. So, unfortunately, it's not usable by any other ninja at the moment, just Phi. It's got 3 power, and once per turn action, attack for 2 resources. It also has the ability, if you control 2 or more Draconic links, Searing Emberblade has go again. So, its activated attacks are considered Draconic, and it considers its own chain link for meeting its effects condition. So, realistically, you just have to have one other Draconic attack, and then attack with Searing Emberblade, and you're good to go. That's really it as far as that character goes. I don't know why I didn't cover Rupture in the keywords. Rupture is more just a condition, I guess. Maybe they didn't see it as a keyword. But Rupture is an ability that's found on a lot of Draconic attacks. It just says, if you have played this as like Chain Link 4 or higher, it gets an effect, right? So there must be 3 Chain Links on the combat chain, and then you play the 4th one with Rupture, and then Rupture activates. The most famous one right now is probably Lava Burst. It's a Draconic action attack. It's a red. It costs 0. Has 2 power and 3 defense. And it says Rupture. If Lava Burst is played as Chain Link 4 or higher, it gets plus 3 power. So, just a quick little thing for both the Draconic characters. Rupture is a pretty present keyword. Oh, I guess something to note that I've noticed is all Draconic cards are red. A lot of them defend for 3. And a good amount of them have that Rupture keyword. Not a lot else going on with those. They were pretty much just super aggressive characters. Dramai being less so, but as of this last Pro Tour that just happened, a little more so. So really flexible. I haven't seen Ninja Turtle being implemented with Phi. We'll talk more about that later once we get to an episode about him, or any ninja really. Last but not least, as the characters we want to talk about are going to be, or is going to be Iyslander Stormbind. This character debuted as a young hero in Everfest, and I really don't know why they even did that. They could have just waited a bit and introduced her here, but they did what they did. So Iyslander is an elemental wizard hero. So she can use a lot of the elemental cards from Tales of Aria and this set now. She's a wizard, and just like the other wizard, starts with a little bit less health, whereas Kano starts with 30, Iyslander starts with 36. The unique thing here is Iyslander has the essence of ice. Now, if we remember from the last episode, essence just means she can use that type of card, so she can very clearly use ice cards. And then Icelander's other abilities are, if it's not your turn, you may play blue non-attack action cards from your arsenal as though they were instant. I feel like that one's pretty straightforward. If you have a blue card in your arsenal that's a non-attack, you can just play it as though it were an instant on your opponent's turn. We've gone over instants a little bit in previous sets, so we won't go over it too much here. Just know that it's quick. Whenever you play an ice card during an opponent's turn, you create a frostbite under their control. So we've gone over frostbites in the last set, so we know that's a negative thing that you can add to the opponent's costs. And then this says whenever you play an ice card during an opponent's turn. So just as long as you're playing ice cards, you're disrupting them a little bit. Things that don't need to be said but need to be said. Blue cards are blue cards with blue color strips at the top of the card. Non-attack action cards can be played as an instant, are considered non-attack actions still, in case anything relies on that keywording. You don't gain action points on opponent's turn, so even if it has go again, don't worry about it. We already went over Frostbites and Tales of Aria. Just know that they're tokens that apply effects. And her effect that creates a Frostbite token is a triggered effect that can be responded to as well. You don't just get to slam the Frostbite on them and they'd have no response time. It's an effect on the layer. Weirdly enough, her signature weapon was not included in Uprising. It was included in Everfest, so we'll go over that as well real quick. Should you choose to go get this card back from Everfest, her signature weapon is the Kraken's Aether Vein. It's a wizard weapon, staff, two-handed, and it says once per turn instant, pay 3 resources, and deal 1 arcane damage to a target opposing hero. Draw a card for each arcane damage dealt this way. So pretty nasty effect, to be honest. Yeah, it only deals 1 arcane damage. Yeah, it costs 3 resources, but if you catch them and you know they don't have any resources left, or you really want to try to peel that last card out of their hand, it does apply pressure because you're going to be drawing a card, and that might let you draw into a blue card for your arsenal. More to talk about that later. And I mean, other than that, this was a really simple set, to be honest. We've covered all the elemental stuff, we've covered all the ice stuff, and that's what I like about getting caught up on all this and teaching all that previously in the last episodes, where we can kind of just move quickly through these and we can get a good idea as long as you have been playing the game for a bit or have listened to the previous episodes. You'll be all caught up. We know what the elementals are all about. The Draconic one is new, but at the same time, it was such a simple addition. It was just raw aggression in the form of rupturing and just weird little, lots of red cards, right? Lots of red cards. That's all Draconic really meant, and it had a cool border. Well, this sounds like a pretty simplistic breakdown of Uprising. This set had a huge impact on the game. Fi alone caused the stubby hammerers from Monarch to get banned. It was just too much value. It was too much value. Just a common equipment from another set added too much to the game. I continue to like how much the team at LSS is not afraid to ban commons, though, again, as I've talked about in the past, I don't particularly agree with banning cards, but if they're going to, make sure they're the actual problematic cards. Winter's Wail. God damn it. A few notable cards that came from Uprising would be like Erase Face. When it hits a hero, cards and tokens they own lose all class and talent types until the end of turn. Sounds like a weird effect because it is. We're getting really creative with some of these 6-hit Majestics that seem to be a running cycle. It affects all cards that the player owns, including the cards in the arena, like their hand, arsenal, deck, pitch zone. Everything loses its class and talent types. This is mostly devastating against things like Runeblade or Elemental heroes who are trying to fuse, but it doesn't prevent a card or token from gaining class types and talent types. It just says they lose them all. I don't know that that affects anything right now, but it's just an interesting effect. Another really notable card from this set was called That All You Got. It's a generic defense reaction that was yellow. It costed 0 and defended for 3. The notable portion of this is it says, while this is defending attack with 2 or less power, when the combat chain closes, draw a card. So it replaced itself. It was a very effective means of defense. This is a card that I think will be fairly important here in a bit. It feels like we're getting into that area. It's called Fog Down. It says non-attack action cards lose and can't gain go again. May not seem super crazy, but I feel like this is going to be a crazy card, right? That's all I can say about that. We also gained Findall's Fighting Spirit, a rare that everybody should have. It seems to go in a lot of decks, and it's just a really efficient card. It comes in the rainbow. It's a generic attack. It costs 3 resources and attacks for 7, 6, or 5, which means the first 2 are poppers for Phantasm. Defends for 2, but gains a life if you have less health than the opponent when you block with it or attack with it. So just a really efficient piece of kit you can add to pretty much any deck. There really wasn't a lot else going on with this set. It was super straightforward. I didn't personally like this draft format as much as the others, and it's still in print as of the time of this podcast's recording, so I would definitely say focus on the others that I have said are better draft experiences first. While Uprising is cool, its draft or sealed experiences were not my favorite. I really want to say it tried to pigeonhole you really hard into the Draconic types. It was really hard to get a good Icelander deck going. But I mean, it's a wizard, so it's just hard to get going anyway. And then he started at less health against 2 inherently more aggressive heroes. I personally ran Fi the first few times, but I also opened up the Tiger Stripe Shuko, which is the legendary for ninjas in this set. Kind of chose the deck for me. I got really good equipment for ninja as well. Yeah, I would just say exciting from a story perspective, a theme perspective, and an art perspective. Very exciting if you liked the look of the Draconic heroes or the Ice Wizard, right? Very good constructed experience. The season was really fun to play over the last year. It's almost been a year now that this set's been out. Very fun to have these heroes in the format. I loved playing Fi. People think that deck plays completely face up. And it can, but just like any good aggro player, you know that there's times to jab, times to haymaker, and you got to know when to mix them up. As of right now, these heroes are Icelanders showing up still. Dramai just took second in the Pro Tour. They're very competitive. They're still showing up a lot. The Tales of Aria heroes are still showing up quite a bit. Fi's taken a little bit of a back seat because of the Ranger dominance that just popped out in this new meta. In the next set we'll be talking about. I also want to brush a little bit on Dynasty while we're here. Like I just said, we won't talk too much about supplementals. I'll never dedicate a whole episode to them. Well, I might, maybe. I guess I won't say never, but I do want to note there is a few extras that came out in Dynasty that were heavily tied to Uprising, so we'll just talk about those here. In Dynasty, we had a lot of returning keywords from all over the place. I'm not going to go over all those, but I do want to note that a new card was printed that was a construct. All right, so a construct is much like an invocation. It resolves flipped as a permanent in the arena, like an invocation. If a card with a subtype construct resolves as a layer on the stack, it enters flipped. The card face with the subtype construct is considered the front face of the card, like invocations are considered the front side of the card. When a dual face card construct is put into the zone other than the stack of the arena, flip it back, just like the invocations. Very simple, and that's kind of why it's good to go over all the sets so you kind of know what to expect and what to see, as I've said previously in this episode. But the card that came out was called Construct Nitro Mechanoid. It's a mechanologist action card, construct. And then it becomes a mechanologist weapon equipment item. All right? It's a yellow pitch card. It costs 4 resources, and it defends for 3. Now that's the action card, Construct Nitro Mechanoid. The actual Nitro Mechanoid, much actually like the last example, is 5 power, but it's not an ally, so it can't be attacked. It's an equipment item, a weapon equipment item. And uniquely, it has 5 defense. That's crazy. So it has 5 power and 5 defense. It says transform target mechanologist head, chest, arms, legs, weapon, and 3 hyperdrivers you control into a Nitro Mechanoid. That's a lot. So first off, to even construct the Nitro Mechanoid, you have to have head, chest, arm, and leg all be mechanologist. You can't use the generic pieces when you're trying to do this. It also requires 3 hyperdrivers. Well, you'll note that I think hyperdriver only came in red in Arcane Rising. The rainbow have been introduced in Dynasty, so you'll have a lot more of them at your disposal. I guess we'll just move on. The next part of the card says if you don't negate this. So if at the resolution of this card you're not able to put a head, chest, arms, legs, weapon, and 3 hyperdrivers under it, the card gets countered, basically. Well, the construction does have go again, so you'll be able to attack. And then when you do resolve this successfully, the opposite side says, action. Banish a card from under the Nitro Mechanoid. Attack. And then it has a keyword called overpower, and then it also has the keyword temper. So we know what temper is, right? It's usually found on a lot of equipment and armor. When this is done defending, put a -1 counter on it. If it has 0 defense, destroy it, right? So that's why the Nitro Mechanoid has 5 defense. You can block a lot of damage with this card. We'll go over a few of the keywords from Dynasty. I really feel like I'm going to add on or just start tacking on some of the supplemental sets to other sets because this is kind of important. Ephemeral is a keyword that says if this would be put into a graveyard, instead it ceases to exist. Doesn't banish, doesn't go, it's just not there anymore, right? Not a lot to go over. It's mostly for the Crouching Tiger tokens from this set. They just say they're a ninja attraction that have 0 cost and 0 power, and they're ephemeral, and they have go again. So once the token hits a graveyard, it doesn't stay there, it goes away. But I kind of got distracted there talking about the other keywords. Overpower is the one I wanted to get to, because the Nitro Mechanoid has overpower. All right? It says the defending hero can't defend this with more than 1 action card. So it's just another one of those abilities that kind of makes it harder to defend. Whereas Dominate says you can't defend with more than 1 card, period. This just says you can't defend with more than 1 action card. So, something for the opponent to think about. It's a static ability that generates a continuous effect. The player cannot declare more than 1 defending action card against the attack with Overpower. And Overpower doesn't prevent additional action cards from being added as defending cards through effects like Amulet of Haven Call or whatever else. A gun from this set also has Overpower, the Hanabi Blaster. And I think one of the last abilities that I want to really talk about... Well, no, we'll talk about two or 3 more. We'll do 2 more. Is Piercing. It's an attribute given to weapons a lot of the time, as far as I can tell or remember right now. It says if this is defended by an equipment, it has plus an amount of power. So if it says Piercing 1, if they defend with an equipment, it gets +1. If an attack with piercing is defended by multiple equipment, it doesn't get multiple instances of +1. It just gets it one time. It just checks to see if it is defended by an equipment. Doesn't matter how many or what kind. It just gets the +1 or whatever. If the attack has multiple instances of piercing, however, each effect is evaluated and applied separately. So then it would stack. But I don't know how you would get multiple effects on a card right now. If somehow the defending card ceases to be defending, piercing loses its power bonus. And the next card, keyword, is contract, I think. It's both a label and a keyword. It represents a static ability, right, that generates that continuous effect, and a triggered effect. Okay, so it does both. All right, when a player is contracted, they're given a set of instructions to complete. If they perform those instructions or meet the requirements, they're considered to have completed the contract. Unless otherwise specified, contracts can be completed any number of times while they're active. Okay, so we'll just talk about a card called Rob the Rich. It's an assassin action attack. It comes in the rainbow, attacks for 5/4/3, 3 defense, costs 1 resource. But it says contract. If you are contracted to banish opponent's cards with cost 2 or greater. When you complete this contract, create a silver token. So if you are able to attack with like 3 Rob the Riches and only one of them hits the opponent's banish, right? Oh, and then I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. It says, when this hits a hero, banish the top card of their deck, okay? So if you have 3 of these in the combat chain and you banish 1 card and it satisfies the condition, you actually complete all 3 of the contracts, right? I feel like I kind of went off the rails on talking about Dynasty. There was so much more in it than I thought. Maybe I will just start adding all of the others as well. Too late for the last ones, but that's fine. They're pretty basic sets. Lots of cards to talk about in Dynasty. Lots of cards to talk about in Dynasty. But I think we're not going to do that. We're not going to go over all of Dynasty. It's a good exploratory set. I want to leave some mystery for you to get in between the boxes, but I did think I needed to go over a little bit of Dynasty stuff for Uprising's release, right? Because Uprising was pretty, like I said, it was a really simple release. Very effective. Not the most game-breaking, right? Because it just came on the heels of Tales of Aria, but very fun in every other way. I'm just glad to report that the league that I've launched for Flesh and Blood in my local area is still going strong. I want to grow the community. Another store in my area has decided to pick up this product. I hope they get more players that aren't just the same players that we have. So we have multiple metas brewing and a bigger storm in this area coming together. We just saw one of our local players head over the Pro Tour and make day 2. That was very fantastic. We see a lot of the times when our players head off to other places, even in the surrounding states, they win the events. I'm glad to say our meta looks very healthy, strong, and competitive. So I hope to bring a lot of that kind of excitement to this podcast. Lots of talking about what's going on as we get into the MLM. I just want to thank you all for listening to this podcast again. Thanks for putting up with me and figuring out how to do these. I want to become more entertaining and more informative as time goes on, and that will only happen with practice. If you can, check out my TCG player store, Crash Command Games. That's what paid for all of this equipment and is now paying for my time to be doing this. If you're listening to this, there will be a Patreon up. You will get early access to these episodes as I'm releasing them, and might even get the rough episodes and give me some critique and maybe see some of the learning process behind all of this. I'm going to go ahead and leave a link to the Discord in the Patreon. Get people in there. As always, we're going to have those local servers up and running for people to play. There's not a lot of spots on them, but there's enough. All right? Enough for my small community anyway. This was a brief overview and back to basics of Uprising. Thanks for chipping in again, deckheads. This one's zeroed.